What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we are returning back to the king of bossing DPS. Of course, I'm referring to Enduring Legacy, which is an ultimate machine gun in the game. Now, with the release of the weapon core system, it has elevated this weapons platform from being just really good to almost being what I would say the best weapon to field whenever you go up against a void intercept boss and you're looking for something to deal some serious damage to the boss's HP bar. Now, by default, this has always been a very strong weapon for any Descendant because it just translates into a lot of raw damage that you essentially get from your weapon. But when you give it to the so-called gun Descendants in the game, like for example Enzo or Haley, who excel at essentially juicing out every last little bit of yum out of a weapon like this, you really have something special on your hands. With the weapon core system included now, we're able to just really zone in on specifically using this as a way for us to deal massive damage against void intercept bosses. But of course, you could also build this to just be a really good mobbing weapon. One of the reasons why I generally consider this to be better at bossing than mobbing is because machine guns actually slow your Descendant model down quite a bit while using it, so it just kind of seems like it's better as a weapons platform for these tough fights against a single enemy than rather using it against many. And that's why I focused on that with this build, and also of course with the showcase that you're watching right now, where I essentially just tear every single void intercept boss that's available to us right now in the game a new arsehole with this. The way that this is set up, you can essentially one mag pretty much every single boss, and in situations where you decide to use this, like let's say a Deathstalker, this can be a phenomenal way for you to pull your share of the damage and make sure that Deathstalker goes down super fast. Now, when we actually look at the build itself, we'll quickly just slap this together, but the base stats of Enduring Legacy give it a really good case for building it crit, right? This has critical hit rate of 20% and a critical hit damage multiplier of 2.3. And so therefore it absolutely makes sense to actually build this into crit. This is further on substantiated by the fact that you would oftentimes pair this with what I would refer to as earlier a gun Descendant. So in the case of Haley or Enzo, and both of those Descendants have ways of juicing up the crit rate of whichever weapon that they have in their hands. So it just makes more sense, more and more you think about it, to actually build this into a crit type weapon where you can also elevate crit hit damage and therefore get the most damage for your buck. Now, basically, we're going to start out with the standard that I would imagine you include in every single weapon. And that is, of course, action and reaction and rifling reinforcement. And you guessed it, fire rate up. So let me find it quickly. Bam. Okay, so that's your first three, and that's essentially basically the starting point of every weapon. I quickly just want to, just in case you've been living under a rock and you don't know how the unique ability of this weapon works, of course we have to bear in mind that Enduring Legacy has an effect which basically grows in strength if you actually use elements, but more specifically fire. So on hitting an enemy, increase status effect trigger rate corresponding to the element fire, chill, electric, or toxic, and inflicts the unique ability quenching to the target enemy. This is a debuff on the enemy. On hitting a burned enemy, increases firearm attack and apply this buff to the attack. So basically quenching, what it does is it actually reduces the fire resistance of the enemy that you're shooting at. For this reason, it makes absolute sense to build this into a fire element weapon. And then of course, when you are hitting enemies that are burning, your firearm attack is going to go up by 11%. So of course, like I said, makes complete sense to bring an element into here, and the element of choice absolutely needs to be fire. We're going to put some fire enhancement on this bitch. If I can find it. Here we go. So we're going to put fire enhancement over here. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us some fire attack equal to 30% of our firearm attack. So again, it makes sense to stack our firearm attack up as high as possible because that's going to make this effect also better, which is why we put in things like rifling reinforcement and action and reaction in case you were wondering about that. Fire rate up is just another good way for us to get our bullets downrange faster. Faster bullets downrange means faster fucking damage to the enemy. So good. Now this is a machine gun, so it has a fairly large magazine. It starts out with a magazine size of 115. But we are going to build this so that it ramps damage. And because that is important to us, the more bullets we have, the bigger our ramp can be and the plateau that we end on in terms of when we are dealing damage. So for that reason, it makes absolute sense to slap in a bunch of rounds per magazine mods that increase the size. So expand weapon charge is the first one we'll throw in here. This gives us 49% increased rounds per magazine, and that's going to push us all the way to 171. But we're not done yet. We're also putting in compulsive magazine, right? So compulsive magazine is going to give us another 39%, but it is going to tank our weak point damage a little bit by like 10%. Now, this is okay because we aren't really building for weak point, and we really want to focus on crit damage, and then of course just actually hitting the enemy like a fucking Mack truck. So this gets us to 216 rounds per magazine, and it's for this reason that I say that you can essentially one mag most of the bosses, especially if you play solo in the game. Even bosses that are resistant to fire like Martin Fortress absolutely get fucked up by this gun, and it's because of the fact that you have so many bullets and because of the fact that you're ramping your damage so much. Now, we are building crits, so we cannot neglect that side of the weapon, and for that, the two better mods, the two better blue mods are the right ones to use. The first one is better insight, which gives us critical hit rate, and the other one is better concentration, which gives us critical hit damage. Now, slapping both of those in nets us 27.8% critical hit rate with a 4 times multiplier, which is super hot. Now, to finish out this little situation here, we're going to drop concentration priority in here as well. What this does is it gives us 120% critical hit damage, which is huge. It does, however, slightly make our reload not that great. So you'll notice that without this mod, our reload is 2.7 seconds. With this mod slapped in, our reload jumps all the way up to 3.51 seconds. It's for this reason that it's very important that you learn the concept of reload cancelling. So oftentimes with weapons that have a super long reload, the smartest thing for you to do is to kick off the reload animation and start reloading the gun, and then you wait for the bar to be about halfway complete. So the little half circle that it does to be halfway through that, and at that point you can roll, and that will actually give you your full mag even though you didn't wait the entire time. So learn that, get the muscle memory for that, because that will actually make this 3.5 seconds not that big a deal to begin with. Our last mod is our gold mod, and this is what produces the ramp that this gun does. So sharp precision shot tanks our fire rate at the beginning by 20%, but then when you pull the trigger and hold it, it increases your fire rate and decreases your recoil and increases your firearm attack by 6% every 0.5 seconds up to 10 stacks. And as long as you hold that puppy in, you are going to be spreading fucking red hot lead all over the enemy's fucking face. So you're going to have 216 bullets of this shit to be able to do, and you're going to ramp up to 10 stacks, and then as long as you hold this in, you will be dealing the maximum damage that this ramp can do. It's for this reason super important that when you do decide to shoot at the enemy, you hold in and you empty your entire fucking load on them, or at least until they keel over, and not to use the weapon for burst firing, since burst firing isn't really going to do shit for you, and you're actually not going to see the benefit of this ramp. In actual fact, it's going to tank your DPS because of this negative 20% fire rate that you have on sharp precision shot. So in the end, with all these mods said and done, we end up with a 27.8% chance to crit with a 6.7 times multiplier. But we're not done yet, because now in come the weapon cores. Before that, I'm just going to use the core interface of Deslin. When we go over here, we'll notice that Enduring Legacy has a free augmentation slot, it has a hit augmentation slot, it has 2 precision augmentation slots, and it has a special. So that gives us some options. Ideally, I would have liked this not to be a special augmentation slot, because fuck that. It would have been busted if it was something else, like an elemental slot or something would have been goated, but unfortunately, these are the cards that we've been dealt. Now, for our free augmentation slot, I ended up opting for a firepower augmentation. With the free, you can take anything. I went for firepower augmentation, and more specifically, I opted for the additional 290% damage to Colossus. Now, it is super important that you actually have this substat, and when we get to the substat just now, I'll just highlight this again. But it makes no sense for you to take this if you don't have additional damage to Colossus as a substat on the weapon. So don't fucking do that. That is a bonehead move. Make sure that you have the substat on your Enduring Legacy that says additional damage to Colossus. Otherwise, this is dead to you. If you would rather build, in my opinion, the inferior version of the weapon, then you cannot roll additional damage to Colossus, and then you can just roll, for example, firearm attack on this. That being said, for our hit augmentation, we have 3 choices. We have weak point damage, we have critical hit rate, and we have critical hit damage. Because in the scenario that I've painted for you here and in the footage that I've showed you, I've been using this weapon on Haley and I've been using this weapon on Enzo. Both of those have abilities of essentially almost getting to 100% crit. So for me, crit hit damage has far more value, and so therefore I chose to put this in here. It's almost the maximum value. The maximum is 30 with a tier 7 mod. I have 29, but that's close enough. I didn't want to split hairs over that 1%, especially because we're getting weapon core tiers 8, 9, and 10 in pretty much like 2 weeks time, so you know, fuck that noise. Then precision augmentation. I said this with my Thunder Cage video and I'll fucking say it again. This is probably the best slot in the game just because of the quality of life that this brings. This is due to the fact that there's 2 options you can pick here: sprint speed as well as grappling hook charge time increase ratio. Now, I could have gone double sprint speed here, which is really good, and since this gun slows you down, that would help out a lot. But what I do like about the fact that grappling hook charge time increased 2 times on this is that because we primarily use this weapon in boss arenas and we fight against void intercept bosses, this gives us a lot of flexibility, especially if you're using mid grappling, to almost stay in the air permanently, because your cooldown is so fast that you're able to just zip around the battlefield with your grapple line and pretty much stay out of danger. So that was super important to me. However, I think it's perfectly fine to have 1 sprint speed and 1 grapple. To have double sprint speed, that's entirely user preference. I leave that up to you, but I'm super happy with the double grapple hook charge time. I think it's fucking dope. I feel like Spider-Man with a giant fucking machine gun. So yay, let's go. And then the last one, special augmentation. You can choose between the 3 different factions. For what it's worth, if you want to use this on the Void Vessel, Legion of Darkness is what you're looking for. But also bear in mind that this also doesn't work unless you have this rolled on your substat. And I have not met one fucking sane person that rolls these faction bonuses on their substats. If you're someone that does that, then you gotta let me know in the comments, because I want to meet you. But this to me is probably the silliest one, because nobody, it makes factually no sense to use this. Its raw damage will always be better than this bullshit. And again, like I said, you not only waste your weapon core slot on this, but you also waste one of your very valuable substat slots on this. So just absolutely makes no sense. But this is it. This is the core system that I ended up using. Now, with all of that said and done, let's quickly also just, you know, make sure what our substats are. So our substats on here, I've had the same substat on this Enduring Legacy for like the longest time. But you go for firearm attack, of course, you want crit hit rate and you want crit hit damage. And then, like I said, if you want to use the 290% additional damage against Colossus, then you need to have bonus firearm attack versus Colossus on your gun as a substat. If you don't have that, that shit is useless. Don't fucking roll it. Don't even try. So these are the 4 substats. Now, let me show you something. With all of that said and done, when we look at the final stats of this weapon, it has a 30.6 chance to crit with a fucking disgusting 8.3 times multiplier when it does crit. When you then put this weapon into the hands of Enzo or Haley, who can jack up the critical hit rate of whichever gun they're holding, you're basically turning this into a portable fucking buzzsaw that cuts down anything that you put in front of it, whether it's solo content or group-based content. I am super happy with this, and I feel, in my personal opinion, that if you have a Thunder Cage and you have this, you kind of like have everything covered. And if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to waste time on fucking making weapons that they don't need, this is all you need. Thunder Cage for mobbing, this shit for killing bosses, and you're good to go. And that is going to be it for the video. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite gun is in terms of cores. I've got a whole bunch more of these coming out. I've done about 6 or 7 weapons up completely with cores, and of course you can expect follow-ups to these when we get tier 8, 9, and 10 on the 6th of Feb, which will even juice these up better and can only make these deal even more damage. I can't fucking wait. This thing is just getting stronger and stronger by the minute, and I love it. Other than that, as usual, fucking cheers.